At 6:30, we call the Monday, August 14th, 2023, City of Mayor, City Council meeting to order. If we could start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do you have any additions to the agenda tonight?
No additions tonight, Mayor.
Look for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion.
Motion, we have a second.
Second.
Motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. That will take us to public comments. If there is anyone who would like to discuss anything that is not on the agenda, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll close public comments. We'll move to consent agenda. Anything on the consent agenda that needs to be pulled for further discussion? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion.
We have a motion from Hal. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. That'll take us into the public hearing. Nick, do you want to say anything before we open the public hearing, or do you want me to go right in and look for a motion to open it?
This would be the public hearing as we're proposing to levy funds under the city's general authority for the benefit of the EDA. We're required to have this public hearing as part of that process.
And I'll look for a motion to open the public hearing on proposed 2024 EDA levy.
Motion.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries, and we are in the public hearing. If there's anyone who'd like to come up and make any comments or discuss anything, please come forward. Nick, do we have any phone calls or any emails that we have to enter in?
Nothing was entered into the record.
Perfect, thank you. Just give it another second here in case someone's running late. All right, with no one last opportunity, anyone want to come forward, please do. Hearing none, I'll look for motion to close the public hearing.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. That will take us to item 12, the adoption of resolution for the EDA levy.
So before you have resolution 2023-27, and this resolution would approve a property tax levy for the benefit of the Mayor Economic Development Authority, as was discussed last year in an attempt to levy for this year. Cities can levy up to 0.01813% of the estimated market value of the city. And that would be about 51,000 in change. And the amount that the city is proposing to levy on behalf is 50,000. So we're below our limit there. We have had our public hearing. We didn't have any attendees, and we did not receive any comments to the record prior to that for tonight's public input. So we would be looking to adopt the resolution, which would hereby approve that 50,000 to be collected and distributed in 2024.
Thank you. I'll look for a motion to approve resolution 2023-27.
Motion.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. That will take us to approval of grant agreement with Carver County CDA for the old fire hall project.
So the Carver County CDA has awarded us our project. We had requested $100,000 and they awarded us $90,000. So this would be a pass through from the CDA to the city. And when Brad Quass has available expenses as part of the old fire hall project, he can then turn those in, to which then we can seek reimbursement for that. Just a note, it's for the $90,000 as discussed, and that would have to be used by February 7th, 2025. However, I was told that if the project does go on longer than that for some reason and they need an extension, they are very willing to work with us on extensions for that.
Wonderful. Any questions or clarification needed on this?
So Nick, as the city acts as a pass through, is it Brad submits a $10,000 reimbursement, the city pays, the city goes to the county to get reimbursed? Or
So
do we get the 90?
So the CDA holds the 90. Their preference is Brad would get as close to the 90,000 as possible in one lump sum.
Okay.
Now, that can be a conglomeration of several expenses, of course, but they'd like to see one reimbursement request rather than 20 different,
Mhm.
500 here, 1,000 there. Accounting nightmare on their end, trying to process each and every one of those and then track it. But functionality, how you're asking would work is he would make a request for the 90,000. He would show all of his receipts. He would give that to me. I would transmit it to the CDA. The CDA would cut a check to the city, to which then we give to Brad.
Thank you. So it's not like we're giving it out, hoping they give it to us.
Right.
Is there anything as far as like the project needing to be fully completed, whatever the plans are for the whole funding of that 90,000?
Now, the project has to be substantially completed for that. He could get reimbursement on some amounts if it was already in progress, but they do want to see the project complete because the stipulation was this was going to happen, not a partially
Gotcha.
done project. So it'd have to be pretty darn near close to completion for them to sign off on it.
Good.
All right, with that, I'll look for a motion to approve the grant agreement with Carver County CDA for the old fire hall project.
Motion.
We have a motion to a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? I just want to thank the Carver County CDA for taking a look at our application and granting it. I think it's going to be very beneficial to the community. So thanks to Carver County for that. No other comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. That'll take us to the 2024 prosecution contract with Carver County Attorney's Office.
So the 2024 prosecution contract with Carver County Attorney's Office is the exact same as the 2023 contract, except there's just a minor difference in there. So how they calculate the cost is they do a 3-year running average of the caseloads between all the cities in Carver County. And last year, our caseload was lower than our typical average. So our part of the cost has dipped a little bit. So in 2023, it was $2,091.12. And then 2024, it'll be $1,870.87, or a decrease of $220.25 for the upcoming year.
Questions for the city administrator? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the 2024 prosecution contract with Carver County Attorney's Office.
Motion.
We have a motion to a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
So on that, do you think that's going to change? Does that have anything to do with the fraud thing? Do you think those numbers are going to change?
No,
this year with
I don't.
that, or-
I don't think it'll change here. 1 second here. Pull it up real quick. I'm hoping I saved it. So what they do is they have, that's awfully small, but. So they have their case listing of the previous 3 years, and then they take the 3-year average of those. And then they have the percent of the total, which then calculates out the cost for them. As you can see for mayor, we had 22, and it dropped to 13 in 2022. So it's by individual caseloads, not necessarily an amount or time and effort or anything like that. So it's by a case number and purely that.
And to Nick's comment about this being real similar to last year's contract, this contract has been very similar for the last almost 15 years that we've been working with Carver County, probably 15 plus. So it rarely changes outside of the numbers. Any other comments or any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the prosecution contract with Carver County's Attorney's Office.
Motion.
Second. Did we already get a motion a second?
Yeah.
We did. I'm sorry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thought I was losing it.
Motion carries. And I
I'm
knew we
glad you
did.
are.
Yeah. I thought we had, and I don't know why I got back into it. So, and you have the original Motion and second, Janelle? Perfect, thank you. All right, that will go to council reports. Councilmember Wagner, anything to report on?
I have nothing.
Councilmember Ely?
Nothing.
Councilmember Hell? And I have nothing myself. I don't think I've had a meeting since last council. Me and the city administrator, as you saw in his report, will be meeting with some potential developers for some initial high-level talks next week, and we'll see where that goes. With that, I have nothing else, so I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. We are adjourned. So with that, we can jump right into the workshop, and we will call the workshop to order. Nick, if you want to start out with the budget update.
Sure will after I get done spilling water on myself.
Hole in her lip?
I got a drinking problem.
Not a good one.
For the workshop tonight, looking at a quick 2024 budget update, we'll take a first look at the CIP, and then we'll go into discussing cannabis use and a potential ordinance, depending on what council wants to do on that. So real quick glance, and it keeps getting quicker and quicker now that numbers get more and more solidified. So changes from the last session to this one. The only one I have here is an adjustment to revenues in the general fund, and that is the only change for this go around. Fire contracts, in digging a little bit deeper into this, there were two parts that were in here that you could see in the past. You had the 52 there and the 15 there for the fire contracts and the fire truck fund. I had originally just rolled that all up into there, but in looking at that further, that the 15 here, which is more like 14 and a half by the contract, but is budgeted as 15, that actually goes directly, that should go to Fund 212 as part of the fire equipment fund as that we hold monies for fire department equipment. And that's what's been done in the past. What's been done is it's come in to the general fund and then it transfers out and then it's adjusted out and then goes to the 210 fund. That's an extra step. We don't really need to do so. When we get the revenues from the townships, we can just split it at that point. The contract, the part of that's associated with the fire contracts goes to the general fund, and the part that associated with equipment can be journaled right into the 210 fund. So we can skip the step of an in and out, and you still have all the documented paperwork that goes along with it. So that is the only change I have to the 2024 budget. So then we'll get on into talking about first look at the CIP. So we'll take a first look at the CIP program. Though this was something that was done by Abdo Eichen Myers as part of our financial assistance package that we had with them outside of the audit. One of the reasons you guys hired me because I have CIP experience, so bringing that to bear and putting together an in-house document as part of that. So for what we'll cover on this one, we're going to talk about the fire department CIP, the general capital equipment CIP, and then some of the other CIP funds that we're still pulling together. So this will be real high level. It's not going to be like an entire budget discussion like we had the first time. This will go a lot quicker. So the goals of a capital improvement program is to try and anticipate what our project costs are going to be in the future as far as equipment goes, and then try to save up money in order to purchase that equipment. So ideally, we would create a list of our major equipment expenses. We then anticipate the future costs at the time of that purchase down the line. And that's a simple way we do that is you apply an inflationary factor to future years. So we get today's prices, and the spreadsheet I use, I figure in a 4% rate of inflation. Now, as years go on, that can be adjusted to see how it actually does, starting off with 4 for now. And then you go into the year down the line where you've got that purchase, then you plug that into your CIP. That's going to be about the cost we expect to pay for that piece of equipment. So you calculate, then you take those, see what your needs are, see what you're levying today, and then you could calculate out the additions to, as part of that levy to the fund that's associated with it. And then when you have purchases come out, you see what your fund balance is at that time. So you're tracking what those look like. And if your number ever dips negative, then you have to ask yourself the question, how do we resolve that? And typically you do one of two ways, either levy more or you bond for the difference. The best case scenario is that we don't bond for any of this stuff. That's the absolute best case scenario. We save up the money and buy it with cash. The best way to illustrate that and why I believe that is that take a piece of fire equipment, for example, a new fire engine is going to run probably $1 million. If you were to bond for that entire project over the life of, a 15-year equipment note at 3.5%, you're going to be $300,000 plus in interest paid on the life of that. Whereas if we save up for it now and pay for it in cash, we don't have to bond. We don't pay an extra $300,000 in interest, plus $25,000, $30,000 in issuance costs for that bond as well. So the idea is you raise it now so you can save money later on, being more fiscally responsible and not having to bond as much for equipment and those types of things. The other thing we like to have with CIP differentiated funds is that you give some more budget stability in the general fund specifically. Because each year, as you have to add more, take out less, depending on what you're trying to purchase that year, your general fund budget just vacillates up and down because one year you're buying a piece of equipment, so your expenses go up, but next year you're not, so it goes back down. What you want, and as we had talked about, is we want your general fund to be purely operational costs, and then the CIP items get purchased out of the separate funds. So for fire equipment, for example, that's the 410 fund, parks is 220. Fire is 210, parks is 220. You have the street fund, which is 405. Public works building is 411. And they have their individual funds that those pots of money sit in. So when a purchase comes in, it hits that fund and it takes the money out of there. So the volatility goes in there, but it's planned volatility. You build up the money, someone gets that, then it does that. Your general fund then looks a lot more smooth because it's just the operating costs. You're not having these wild fluctuations. Then when it comes budget time, it's like, oh, why was our budget $200,000 higher last year than it was this year? Why did it change? And it just adds a lot of ease to that. So when we look at the fire department CIP listing, we have a handful of items that we have included in there. The equipment we have listed is the small rescue vehicle, and we figure that today's dollars, $100,000. The heavy rescue vehicle, which would be $600,000. The 2000 engine at $950,000. The 2005 tanker at $300,000. Turnout gear, helmets, and SCBA at $350,000, and then the side-by-side and extrication tools for $90,000. The nice part about having this in-house is this becomes our living and breathing document. So if changes come down the line, the city grows, and we have to add another engine or another piece of equipment, we can adapt our CIP to make sure we keep up with those needs as things come along. So for the fire department calculations, and I'll bring up another spreadsheet when we take a look at this once again. So for the fire department calculations, what we're looking at, we're currently levying $100,000 per year. $14,000 of the fire contracts, as we talked about, goes into the fire CIP. And then when we look at the spreadsheet, we won't go to it, it's just a massive thing, but when we figure out what we need to be at with all of that equipment and paying for it in the future, the levy need to be starting in 2025. We need to get that up to 180,000, and then in 2016, 185,000 and beyond to meet the funding needs through 2034. So 2034, we picked that date because that's when the major purchases we're looking at for, say, the fire engine take place. And we want to make sure we get those all encompassed in before. So you don't want to keep those out of the calculations because that's some of your major expenditures. So that encompasses all the equipment that has been purchased in that. We move on to talking about the general capital equipment CIP, and this fund, just to talk about it a little bit more, is I talk about Fund 435 because all of our funds have a number associated with them, and that's how I zone in on them. So fire equipment is 210. General capital equipment is 435, and this is a fund that historically has been used. Some of the community center improvements were taken out of there. The rooftop units were taken out of there. The snow equipment was taken out of there. And where it gets its funding from is that right now our fund balance policy for the general fund says we want to be at 50% of next year's expenditures. So if our fund balance is above that 50%, council can, at their discretion, move that amount that is above the 51% over to the 435 fund. Now, that's worked historically. However, I don't like it because it's not a dedicated funding mechanism to try to pay for things like pickup trucks and lawnmowers and skid steers and front end loaders and all the equipment we have. I say that because if we're doing our budgeting job really well, not much should be rolling over. So how do you then pay for all your snow removal equipment when it comes due to replace it? Well, we need to have some sort of funding mechanism for that. So what I'm proposing in that, and I'll switch to that spreadsheet after this, is there were some CIP monies still left in the general fund in the 2022-2023 budget. The lawnmower and the tool cat got purchased out of the general fund, out of the streets department. And then some of the remaining, the LED lights and the bar and some of the other stuff, the cooler, that came out of some CIP monies that was in the general fund under general government, or the community center department. What we want to do is, like we said, get everything to an operational basis. So we want to move those CIP monies out of the general fund, which was, we had 50,000 allocated in the general fund and 20,000 allocated this year in the streets fund, so 70 total. Let's get that out of the general fund and let's put it up into this dedicated funding. So our expenses decrease on the general fund, but then it's just going up, so it's a wash. And I'm not even proposing we're going to do the full 70 right out of the gate. It's actually 40 I'm actually looking at to start with, but I'll show that as we go here. So I'd like to have that dedicated funding stream and give better utilization of the 435 fund so we know what it's going to be about. And those things that we have in there, various city hall and community center improvements. That includes flooring in general when the time comes. This is fairly new, so it'll be 20 years before you have to touch this. But gym floor at some point, we're going to have to take a look at. The roof, that's good for probably another 20 years. That was replaced not too long ago, but we need to have the money socked away 20 years from now to pay for it again. HVAC units on the rooftops. When we talk about public works, it's lawnmowers, tool cats, skid steer, front end loader, snow equipment, pickup trucks, things of that nature, having in there. So when we look at the calculations for that, right now we're levying nothing as part of it. It's just a rollover from the general fund surplus, should and if and when that happens according to the fund balance policy. So again, shifting that out, recommending dedicating 40,000 in 2024 and then increasing that by 10,000 every 2 years thereafter. So 2026 it goes up to 50, 2028 60, 2030 up to 70. And you keep increasing that over the 2 years. Based upon the spreadsheet, it should be taking care of those items that we have allotted in there. Some of the other CIP funds we have that haven't gone into aren't going to go in too great of depth quite yet. Park improvement fund, the street fund, and the asphalt sidewalk replacement CIP, which is very draft at this point. So the park improvement fund, that's the dedicated for fixed park improvements. We want the 435 to be more operational equipment pieces, which is why lawnmowers are in there. Whereas your park, you're thinking basketball courts and gazebos and benches and playground equipment and splash pads and pavilions and all that good stuff. We're not going to go hard into it quite yet because the park fund is spent through 2024 with the splash pad and pavilion. That's their whole thing. And they have the longest list of projects out of all the CIP listings. So it's going to take a lot more work to get plowed through that to figure out what that's going to look like when they plan to implement. So being as though they've got all their money spent through next year, it gives us a little bit more time to put that one together. I wanted to get fire and the 435 one in order, because that has the biggest impact, I think, on what we do. Not to say park isn't important, don't get me wrong. Not saying that at all. We just got a little bit more time to pull that one together. For the street improvement CIP, this one's dedicated to really street projects. It's street reconstructs, mill and overlays, seal coating, crack filling, patching, those related expenses. We're putting 100,000 away each year for that, and I think that'll be just fine for now. The one we still have to have discussions on is the asphalt sidewalk replacement CIP. Right now, I have 100 grand built into that one, and I showed that in the previous spreadsheet because that's taking the public works monies that we were levying for and just shifting it up because that's a project we need to figure out what we want to do. Now, if we decide to do something else, we can always adjust that and shift the monies elsewhere, but it works well within our levy, and I'll be showing that in just a moment here. But that's to figure out what we do when we replace the paved trail that we have that's getting towards end of life. All right, any questions on any of that CIP stuff in the first look? All right, so you guys have seen this spreadsheet before. This is my levy comparison calculations. Again, it's got the capital levy up top, debt here, and then bringing it all together at the bottom. So we look at our preliminary here for 2024, and we have the fire department here at 100, streets at 100, and that's what it's been historically, except for last year when we did streets to do the project. Bringing it back down once again, 50 for park, and this is where we've got the public works building ending because it's built or just about done, be done this year. Shifting that into asphalt sidewalk replacement potentially as a source, because we had talked about shifting that, doing 100 grand a year, and you just replace $100,000 worth each year until the darn thing's done. And then here you have the 435 general capital equipment, and that's where we talked about the 40 grand to start, then 50, then up to 60 through 2028. Debt service here, and that hasn't changed, and nor will it. So here you have, again, down here, the general fund, capital levy and debt service, and that just pulls the numbers down. So when we look at 2024 here, looking at reducing the levy back down 175,850, because last year we had increased it by 163,506, and that was at 12%. Over the previous year, that was down from 30, but still an increase. But as that gentleman who sat in that chair during our truth and taxation hearing had said, government's never lower. And I told him, I'm a man of my word. I will be lowered. I guarantee it come next budget season. And here we are. Next budget season. And we're taking it back down, at least at this point, lower than what we had raised it before. And then you look in future years, and this is where we get back up. So in future years, you're talking 2% increases, between 0 and 2% increases going forward. And then in 2025 here, you can see you've got the 180 built in there. And this is a very flexible document, so don't take this as gospel, please. This is our working document on this. I even plugged in an extra 25 for Parks and Rec, just to give them a little bump up, just in case they need it. I didn't flesh it out, but just plug that in there. There it goes to 185 there in 2026, and then we continue on like that. So even with those types of increases in there, and the reason for that is so the reason for that is like, well, how does that work? How do you know that in 2025? I put together a very skeleton 2025, adjusted some figures really quick. And what we have in play for 2024 is we've gotten an LGA increase. So that was a nice boost to what we had, but we also have that one-time payment to Para, which took a good chunk of that out. Now, I'm not anticipating that for 2025, so that one-time payment comes off our expenses, and we still have all the LGA sitting there. So it's a reduction of expenses that allows us to shift some of that into other areas to make sure we're getting things funded where they need to be. So the stars are aligning. You also have the debt service falling off, whereas 2024, that's our last sewer debt cover for the 2017. You have the 2015 bond falling off. And then after 2025 and into 26, you've got this bond falling off as well. So between bond falling off, LGA going up, you have an expense coming off the books in 2024. It's working. It's working. So that's where we could get into here. And even, we talk about this number, and that's with this 474, 516 plugged in. If we go back to the draft budget, and this is something we'll decide here before the end of September, is we plug that number right out of here. This is for our 2024 budget. But if we go to the bottom of the budget, we look at revenues over expenditures here. Our 2024 budget currently has $56,650 revenues over expenditures. We're going to need to decide what we want to do with that. Now, it could range for as you lower that 474 that we saw at the top by 56,650, you just lower it, you're done. Or if you want to reallocate those funds somewhere else, you would lower that top number, then you could lower it elsewhere. But this number could easily, we do something like, oops. Something like that. It reduces it even further.
Or we could consider increasing the parks by 25,000 this year so that we're got a little bit of room since they've already spent their money through 2024 and they have the longest list.
Yep. That's exactly it.
Or
Those are the considerations we want
do
to
more on the asphalt trails or
Yep, that's exactly it. It's whatever you guys want to do as city council and how you want to allocate that. I'm going to present you guys the band of options and you guys tell me how you want that all adjusted. And
I guess I'm a little concerned with a 12% increase and 11% decrease and I don't like, right? If we could,
right.
even if you had figured out something inside of the budget, so it was a 6% decrease, we're still saving money, but then maybe you don't see other increases across future years.
My recommendation I'm going to go hard with is this decrease as a minimum. Because this increase was solely to offset, because we had the multiple projects. We had the public works building we had to get paid for. We had the street project that we had to raise funds for. And at that time, we thought the street project was going to come in more expensive than it did. So the idea of this increase was we thought the costs were going to come in higher. Thankfully, prices on asphalt came down. Great about that. But this was meant to be a one-time increase, and then it was meant to come back down. That was always the intent here. So this, I think, stays. Now, how much further you drop this is up to you guys. But I think this is what you start with, would be my hard recommendation on that one.
I like your idea, Peggy. Keeping those funds back, putting it into something constructive. I mean, almost a 12% decrease is a nice decrease, and it looks like we can level it off, if not zero it out in the next coming years. Unless something unforeseen comes up, but I don't foresee anything at this point.
Yeah, because what you could do is say, if you decrease this by 56,650, which was that number, all right, that balances out. Well, go up here and just because I don't want to spend too much time here, 56,650. You just add it right back up there and you're still at that figure.
I kind of like that.
Or however you want to split that out, 25 here, 25 here, pick your poison type of stuff.
Now, if we allocate it to a fund, like you just did there,
Mm-hmm.
and let's say we wanted to move forward with some of the sidewalks and things, can we pull those funds back,
Pull those funds back.
like out of Park and Rec for the sidewalks and things?
No, well, yes, you can. You guys are ultimate masters of how those funds get allocated out. So you could take from other funds and do what have you. The idea is you shouldn't.
Okay,
If you dedicate it for something, make sure it stays in that pot of
that's
money.
that's the point I was getting to.
Otherwise, you get into this game that the federal government like to play and take from pots to do this and that.
So we need to really,
Understand where money is.
yep, so we need to have a
Things
good,
come up and we may have to shuffle things for certain reasons, but
otherwise they
when
should
we
stay.
dedicate them to, we should If we can't get it, we should be doing a better job if we can't.
Right.
manage that.
Well, yeah, maybe just split it in half, give half to Park and Rec and put another 25,000 towards cementing the sidewalks.
Nick, the 2021, 22, 23 Park and Rec was 50,000. In 2020, was it 100? I thought because of the debt service, like I thought at some point years ago, it was 100,000 going into Park and Rec. And then because of the debt service, that was one of the things we reduced. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
I don't know.
It was.
But right, like, okay.
It was.
And I wonder, right? Like, so should we get back to 100,000 in the park board? I know you put 75 in there for future years. I mean, it seems to be from, you know, the interactions at the Rising Community Festival, the parks, the splash pad, the basketball courts got really good feedback.
So let me,
And I think, right, somebody said that's what, you know, that's the sexy part of the city. Like, yep, the sewer and the water is just what we pay for and nobody cares until it doesn't work or it goes bad.
oh, yeah,
But the
I-
parks are what the community talks about.
See, now that I'm comfortable with. I like that.
all right, so what I did here, we could play with the spreadsheet because it's ours, is changed Parks and Rec to 75, up from 50, and then asphalt sidewalk to 125, up from 100. I then reduced this year's down 50,000. And so for the general fund in these future years, there's just a 4% inflator because you can't predict the future, so we just add an inflator. So if you do that, here's what your future year increases look like. So you still go down the 175, 850 there.
See, I like them better. The point. 10%.
Yep.
I like that better.
Yeah, that's the sexy part of the city for sure. Long ago, I learned on infrastructure projects, what people care about is the sexy part. It's the black, the white, and the green. It's the concrete, it's the asphalt, it's the grass.
Yep.
But the real meat and potatoes of a street project, an infrastructure project, are the pipes underground. That's what. 'Cause everybody's all hunky-dory right up until there's a sewer backup or the water doesn't turn on.
I think as we get more of a vision from the Park and Rec, I'm not sure where they're sitting now is what next items they're looking at. 75, do we even need 75? And I don't know what projects they're looking at, doing it here in the next couple of years.
That's the beautiful part
At
about,
some point, we can't, I don't want to throw 100,000 in there just to throw 100,000 when we could use it in streets. Just knowing we've just spent a lot on Park and Rec this year. So we got to see some of that vision too, I think.
yep. I think the nice part about it being our CIP is, let's just, for argument, we do 75, and then we get through the CIP and we go, whoops. They only need 40,000 to get all of their stuff done in the timeframes they want to get them done. And they go, okay, well, 75, well then if you need more in streets, you could take the difference of that and just like we did here, reallocate that up into here. And
Very preliminary yet.
because we look at the sum total.
And starting to build Park and Rec fund up again isn't a bad thing.
No.
Right now, today, we don't have a lot of green space for a lot of extra additions for things. But hopefully in the future, we will get park dedications from developers and then we'll want to be able to do something with those parks. So it'll be good to start saving.
Derek, are they still talking about the dog park next?
I wasn't at the last meeting, so I'm not sure.
So here's just real quick, I'm not going to go through all the funds, but here's the real starting. And we're looking at, this is their list of projects. I mean, it's not just all major stuff, but it's bike racks, bench. It goes by park, possible disc golf course, depending on location, parking lots. I don't know if they talked about a dog park.
Up there.
Oh yeah, Fenced Dark Park and West Ridge Park. two possible locations.
Yeah, because I know they were talking about extending the trail through there too.
Yep. Westridge Park, add trail connections.
Yep.
There's just a ton of stuff in here. We got to get costs for, put it together. When do they want to implement it?
Right.
And then very similar to, like the capital equipment one here. We've got costs for a lot of this. We know their expected life or thereabouts and expected year to replace type of stuff. And then that builds out the spreadsheet this way. So you just got to do that with parks, but there's just a lot to do it there.
Start with the small stuff, knock that off. And
So that's the general thought process here as we tie it all together. And this is part of the nice part about doing it in-house, because then we get the different sectors of our finances all
Right.
connected together.
nice job, Nick.
All right, so that's CIP. Where am I at? Here. We'll move on to cannabis. Much more fun topic, much more relaxed topic. So
I won't comment.
I'll give a little background on the law update, some of the highlights about it, and then what I'd really like to have is a discussion on what, if anything, city council wants to do regarding regulation of use in public places. So we'll do an overview of what became legal, the new law as of August 1st, and then discussing what, if anything, we should regulate in public places.
Was everyone able to watch the meeting of the link that Nick said from the week?
I didn't
Good.
get a chance
So
to
that's some
watch
background.
the
Okay.
whole thing of it.
There's some good information there, which is going to lead in all this.
Yeah, a lot, you're going to see a lot of carryover on that as part of that. So the 2023 session, House File number 100, or Chapter 23, as it was signed into law, was passed and went into effect on August 1st, 2023. It is now legal to possess 2 ounces of cannabis flower or 8 grams concentrate or 800 milligrams of edible products, 2 pounds of flour in a private residence, or and that could also be not just on your person, but in a vehicle, trunk, or area not normally occupied by the driver. Cannot be possessed on or in public or charter schools and school buses, state correctional facilities, federal property, if you're under 21, or in the vehicle in the open and not in the trunk. So now we get to the more of the use part of it. The use of cannabis is allowed, and this can't be touched by any local law in a private residence, including the yard. They also talk about the curtilage of the curtilage, and that's just the area immediately outside of the residence. They use that word. It's not an often used one. But basically on the property, or the private, and then any other private property, as long as the owner does not prohibit it. And then events licensed to permit on-site consumption. So if they get a state permit to do a festival and they permit it to be on there, then the city can't just X that one out either. Prohibitions on use of it is anywhere prohibited by the Clean Indoor Air Act. And just a refresher on the Clear Indoor Air Act, that's pretty much anywhere indoors. There's a small list of places that it does not cover, but any here, bars, restaurants, all that stuff. It's not prohibited for use in there while operating vehicles, public or charter schools and school buses, state correctional. So public and charter schools, that's one thing I'll touch on real quick is, I don't know if it just means the buildings or if it means the property of those. So outside places.
I'd be willing to bet it's the property.
I'd be willing to bet too. I did reach out to our 2 local schools and ask their thoughts on it. And if we want to be on the safe side, and if we craft an ordinance on that, they would like to be included on that, their whole property. One school did ask for 1,000-foot radius from their property, but I think that's going to get into too many technical issues that we don't really want to get into at this point, as the state law gets fleshed out, since it's pretty new. So I think if it's just confined to just the properties, that's put that emphasis in there if it's not already implied in the state law. State correctional facilities and public federal property, or in any location where a minor may inhale the smoke or vapor.
So that includes like parks and so on and so
Where?
forth. anywhere a minor may inhale. I would almost assume.
That's a floating place. If you're sitting in the street and there's a minor there,
Gotcha.
you got to snuff it out. I assume it refers to secondhand smoke type of stuff. So what that thrust is at. So city regulation of use in a public place. So we can adopt an ordinance prohibiting use in a public place. And we're given pretty broad authority to define what public place is. And as long as it doesn't touch on those three places, the private residence, including the yard, the private property, unless the owner prohibits, or the offense license, it can be deemed public place. I know some cities who have banned it outright in all public places, and they've defined public place as anywhere not those three. I know the city of Carver did it, for example. They enacted their ordinance to do it outright. That's the most extreme you do. And then the other extreme is obviously you don't put any ordinance in place, and as long as it's not covered by those or the Clean Indoor Air Act, you're pretty well good to go on that. So some common examples of public places for consideration: city parks and trails, streets, alleys, sidewalks, or other rights of way, other publicly owned land that we have, private businesses used by the public, and that's indoor or outdoor, though the Clean Indoor Act generally covers those indoor places. But if they have a patio or an adjacent area where people can take drinks or do things like that, could be covered there as well. Consider the dual nature of cannabis. It can be smoked or it can be consumed. It carries a dual nature because some people regard it as tobacco, but it can also be regarded in some ways to alcohol in that it has an intoxicating effect, not just the smoke or odor, because it can be consumed in an edible format. And what council feels that. In our ordinances, we don't ban smoking in any of the parks. It's free to do. However, we do ban drinking out in any of our parks or public places. We ban drinking in public in general. As part of our liquor ordinance, you can't be drunk in public or intoxicated in public. So things to think about. I'm not pushing one way or another on anything. It's just wanted to bring it before us. A lot of cities are asking all the same questions, and all cities are taking various stances on it. It's really what we want to do for mayor and what fits us best. So with that, I will toss it to council for discussion.
Thoughts on it?
I don't think it's gonna be a big problem. I really don't. There's no place to even get it right now. You're gonna
You
be,
can't.
no, it's gonna be,
Well, the
it's gonna be years before you get it.
Assume you can.
Well, yeah, but as far as the smoking kind,
You can grow
I
your own.
guess.
well, you
Yeah.
can.
Right? 8 plants.
Sitting in my backyard.
Can't. They got to be locked and unseen.
What?
Can't have them in your backyard.
Yup, or in your garage open, like when they first passed it in Colorado when I was there. My neighbor had the garage open with 5.
So I guess
Ruined
it's,
my retirement plan. The whole backyard was gonna be, no.
it's interesting to me that we don't have ordinance regarding smoking in the parks.
Yeah.
Has there been any complaints ever?
So, it's what?
I
Oh,
don't
it's
think it has a
easy.
place in the parks, where the playgrounds are and that, especially with as many little kids that are in this community.
So, Chapter 95 in our city code was relating to public parks. Then you get down to parks, rules, and prohibited acts. No glass, no recreational motor vehicles, no moving to facing property, no refuse trash, unruly disturbances, firearms or explosives, no camping, concessions. And then you have alcoholic beverages you can't drink, but you go down and there's nothing about smoking.
I just don't think it's a problem. Most smokers are pretty respectful. I mean, if you're not pissed up, and I don't think a lot of smokers go sit in parks, to be completely honest. I don't think it's ever been an issue. I mean, I hear what you're saying.
I don't think it's an issue until it gets past like what I saw when I was in Colorado, and then everyone was just on the streets and you're walking down and you're walking past a cloud of smoke with your 2-year-old.
Or you go to
Oh,
the
yeah, I
Vegas.
don't think We're gonna have to do
but
something.
again,
Yeah.
If that's a problem, it would have already come to light. If there was problems with cigarette smoke, why is it gonna change now if they can smoke cannabis? It's a different smell. I mean, we haven't had a problem with, or I haven't heard of anything where it's an issues in our park.
No,
Not that we shouldn't get ahead of things, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but
I've never heard
I
of
don't
it
want to
being an
create
issue.
issues either.
No,
For me, I'd like to look at it as just every rule we have in place for cigarette smokes or alcohol drinks. I think we should add cannabis or edibles into those and not change anything up. To me,
For the
it's no
time
different.
being.
To me, it's no different than drinking
right.
if it's intoxicating, or to me, it's no different than smoking cigarettes. And if you can smoke cigarettes, why not cannabis?
So we can't drink in the parks, but we can smoke cigarettes in the park. So where do you put cannabis? You can
I
or
would
you
put that
can't?
in same with with the intoxicating. So
Yeah.
if in
I,
any of those two where it talks about smoking or intoxication, I think we add them both. We add them into those.
I agree.
And if it says no drinking in the park, then I would say no cannabis in the park.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Because to me, they're the same. To me, they're the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why I was
agree.
asking.
Yeah.
Again, my question was, what exists today for smoking and
I would
drinking?
follow whatever we have. So if someone rents a community center and they can step out in the parking lot and smoke a cigarette, I think they can smoke cannabis out there then. Now, if they can't take alcohol on the parking lot, they shouldn't be taking cannabis out to the parking lot. So wherever our rules are now, I think we should just align with them.
Makes sense. Be easy.
That's just my opinion.
I would agree with that. You know, you're still
So
gonna
you
have.
you err on the side of caution though. So we're gonna follow the restrictions for alcohol first. Because again, you can go outside and smoke cigarettes, but you can't go outside and drink. So which one? Where like that's where I struggle a little. Like
So whichever
think-
one it would fit, it fits into both. So the smoking one's out because you can smoke, but you can't drink. So I'd say you can't smoke cannabis because it's intoxicating. So I'd say whichever one rules over.
whichever
Does
one
that
is
make
more
sense?
I see
strict.
what you're saying.
If it's
More
more stringent,
restrictive?
yeah, whatever one,
Okay.
because it's
You
gonna
can still go out
fit,
and
it's gonna
smoke your
fit into
cigarette.
both of them. So if it
But
fits
you
into
can't-
one, or it's gonna either fit into one, both, or none.
Yeah.
And if it's
And
fits
then-
into none, then I think you can do it.
I agree with the alcohol to the cannabis as far as the whole high thing or whatever you want to call it, the effects of it.
Like I said, we can always change that. I mean, we can make them more stringent if this becomes an issue, but I think initially going into it, I don't know if I'd put extra restrictions on. It's legal now. I mean,
But some restrictions
Yeah,
similar
yeah,
to
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no alcohol in the park, no cannabis in the park. No, you know,
That's how I think we should at least.
that's the way I'd start it too. I agree.
So would this would be considered a government center, right? So there would be none on this property or close to the
This isn't a
splash pad or
federal.
So indoors can't. And smoke it.
outdoor in the parking lot though? No, yeah. Yeah.
But this isn't a federal, right? So you said a government
Yeah.
place. It's only federal.
You can't
Only
come to the
federal.
post office smoking a joint
Or a cigarette.
or a cigarette
You can't have a
Yeah.
cigarette.
or have a firearm on you either.
Or get a beer, but if we, outside of this, if we think it's necessary, maybe within 50 feet of our parks, our actual playground equipment or the splash pad or the we don't allow, and we want to not allow smoking just because we're making some improvements, we can do that too. And I'm not opposed to that. I don't think people should be smoking cigarettes or cannabis within 20 feet of playground equipment. But maybe the child thing fits into that. If there's kids there, you can't do it anyways. So maybe by default, that rule's already there.
Not to make it more complex, you consider the dual nature, but I guess you could also bifurcate. We'll take community center, for example. You can't smoke in here, but maybe you're allowed to smoke outside in the parking lot. But inside, do you allow people to use edibles or? if they go outside and they pop an edible, is that allowable, or do you say no smoking at all, or?
Well, if we allow them to drink at events in there,
So,
then they should
right,
be able
like,
to do edibles in there.
what about smokeless tobacco, like chewing tobacco? Like, can you use that in here?
Yeah.
It says no
theoretically.
smoking.
Wouldn't you consider cannabis in the community center, just like alcohol in the community center? You have to be certified, you have a liquor license in order to have actual alcohol, so you would have to have some sort of a
Yeah, but,
license for cannabis.
but not necessarily because,
Only if they're distributing it.
right,
If someone was buying a bunch and they're selling
Yeah,
stuff
but you
to,
can't, even if you brought your own alcohol in here, you still can't do that.
okay.
You have to have a liquor license holder.
But
Well, but
I can
what's
bring it in
stopping it?
for my private event and not sell it.
No.
You-
Not alcohol,
Not
not
alcohol.
alcohol.
no, they won't let you.
Well, we have. I mean, but how many other people have? I mean, if you have a wedding and it's open bar and you just bring it in and you're not selling, you're providing the beverage.
It doesn't have anything to do with the selling of it, it's just having it on the premises. It's a liquor liability.
Like if somebody's personally taking cannabis or edibles in the building, I don't think you can regulate that. If they took one in their car,
Yeah, you're not gonna,
you,
wouldn't know anyway.
no,
So. I think the smoke part is it lingers around and you're able to.
I think
smell it.
initially we line up whatever we have in place and then work through some of those things.
I would
as they
agree.
come up. Honestly, people who are using cannabis now after the first were using it before.
right.
And they're not going to change their habits. I don't think now they're going to all of a sudden, yeah, I can start walking down the street smoking. this.
No.
I don't see them changing their habits of it. So I don't see it as being, I'm willing to bet people step outside of the community center and have been smoking cannabis out there for years and years at events.
I would agree with that as well.
On the way home from up north this weekend, heading down 169, there's a car on the side of the road with it was a piece of cardboard that looked to be like a sun visor that was written cannabis for sale. Like, I mean, sitting right next to Highway 169. So I'm not sure that I agree with if whatever they did yesterday, they're doing today.
Yeah,
like
well,
there are some,
That's certainly not 100%.
Yeah.
By no means. There's going to
You'll-
be a few outliers.
You'll
right?
see it, yeah, you'll see it, because
It's-
we saw it. You'll see it for sure.
But we got a long ways
Yeah,
before
it's
there's
not-
Yeah.
distributors and all that stuff. I think we go with the alignment for now. We can change it later.
Alignment of the alcohol.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we can change it as the times progress. And if Waconia opens a cannabis store or Delano or Watertown or whatever, then we can start, if it starts becoming an issue, we can just realign our thoughts and go from there. I mean, we'll still be ahead of the curve in setting these already,
I think that's.
but I don't want to just all outright just,
More and more is going to come up from the league. In the next
exact.
year, for sure on things.
and again,
As things start coming up and happening with the larger communities that are going to
Yes.
kind of trickle down
Right.
to our tiny community.
yeah, and as they get I can't remember the governing unit, the board, the whatever they call them,
OCM, Office of Cannabis Management.
yeah,
Yes.
I think they'll come down with, as they
As that starts
put
happening,
regulations
things will come up,
into,
yeah. And we can
becoming a
take direction from
retailer
that.
and
It'll be another year for that to really start.
yeah, that's what
Trickle down.
2024. I do like your comment, Mike, about, right, like, I think we should talk about, no smoking 50 feet from playground equipment or something, even cigarettes.
That just might be something we should have had implemented. I'm not implementing because of this, but that's just seems reason. It's
Yeah.
logical to me to
Right.
really enforce it to keep it away from the kids.
Yes.
Again, I don't think it's been an issue, but
Mhm.
I don't think we're trying to fix something that's not there in that instance. I think
No.
that just makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially now that we're gonna have a splash pad and a lot more kids, a lot more often in one place.
Mhm.
So I think it makes some sense.
So-
Look at that.
It's most-
Not looking to slay the beast tonight. I'll put together some draft language as part of an ordinance. I'll bring it back to another work session. We can take a look at that and hash it out some more there.
It's mostly vapes in
I
the
think we're
park.
getting ahead of it already by talking about it now, and as things come out in the next year, I think it'll be helpful for us also for more guidance. And you keep your finger on the pulse, what other communities are doing as you meet.
Mhm.
And some we may look at as, oh, great idea, let's implement that too, so
All right.
works for me.
I just don't want to be one of those communities that outright just bans it like,
I don't think we should. I think if someone was opposed to this becoming legal, they should have already been talking to their state legislators long ago about this, and we should have been at the Capitol saying we, opposed to
Right.
it. And that didn't, we had our representative here, and I didn't hear anyone say,
no,
I'm opposed to it. I don't
No.
want to see that. So it's out there now. So
I think a lot of people benefit from it sometimes.
yep.
all right. Anything else on that? With that, we will adjourn. We are adjourned. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Nick.